to borrow and spend trillions of dollars on government programs that don't work.
Joining me now, California Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who is launching a series of 50 speeches in 50 days to rekindle the war on poverty. Congresswoman, it's nice to see you this morning. And let's just talk about what we expect to see this afternoon, because we know that both Marco Rubio and Eric Cantor will be giving speeches on poverty, Cantor focusing on education, Rubio expected to denounce the Great Society programs as a failure. So ultimately, the right has a very different perspective and point of view on these safety net programs. Instead of seeing them as lifelines or nets that they are, Republicans would rather paint them as nests or breeding grounds for laziness. So how do you find a solution when the two sides fundamentally view what these programs really mean in different ways?
We have to find a solution, because we're talking about nearly 50 million people living in poverty now, 16 million of whom are children. We have a long way to go. We have to create economic growth and job opportunities. But of course, the Republicans and the Tea Party are standing in the way. And so what the Republicans are continuing to do is to promote the economic policies, quite frankly, of the Bush administration, which of course got us into this mess that we're in now, with poverty rates beginning to soar. When you look at what is taking place today, we're trying to extend the emergency unemployment compensation policies and programs. We're talking about 1.4, 1.5 million people who are without emergency unemployment compensation. That has helped 11 million people stay out of poverty. When you're talking about what we want to do as Democrats, raising the minimum wage from $7.25 to $10.10 an hour, I think it should be, of course, a living wage, but minimally we should raise it minimum wage. That will create at least over 1 million people who will be lifted out of poverty. And so what they're doing is going back to the same old economic policies of the Bush administration that got us in this mess in the beginning.
When you talk about this, though, I mean, and you're hitting this on a lot of different fronts when you take on the conversation about what it means to be impoverished in this country. I do want to remind people that you were once on food stamps. You've spoken powerfully about that time in your life. But this divide is no more evident than this issue of the unemployment benefits that you spoke of that's now being debated in the Senate. And we have House Majority Leader John Boehner opposing an extension that is not paid for. Now, President Johnson said, quote, "This will not be a short, easy struggle, but the richest nation on earth can afford to win it." What will yours and other members of Congress and the message be over the next coming days? Because there are some people, Congresswoman, who say, well, the president has been in office for 5 years. He needs to take ownership of this economy, and it's not just a kickback to the 8 years under President Bush.
Well, when you look at what has taken place, I think the facts speak for themselves. The president came forward with an economic recovery plan when he first took office because of the Bush administration policies. We were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs. That has worked. We haven't gotten to a full employment economy, but the employment rate has gone significantly down. The Republican Tea Party has been obstacles all along the way. They have not actually supported any of the president's economic policies. When you look at the government shutdown and the budget cuts, we're looking at a Republican Party which really has begun to erode the safety net. They supported a $40 billion in food stamp cuts out of the House. That's unconscionable. And yes, there's some of us who have been on public assistance and food stamps. That was a very difficult period during my life, but my government was there for me. The people were there for me. We need to be there for the American people and make sure that income inequality does not continue to grow, and that we lift people out of poverty into the middle class, and that we make sure that the middle class do not fall into the ranks of the poor. That's what we're fighting for. We're fighting to cut poverty in half in 10 years. Immediately, we want this unemployment compensation, this emergency unemployment compensation bill passed.
Congresswoman, when we talk about that, real quickly, the Washington Post has this report out saying that House Republican leaders sent a memo this week to the entire GOP conference with talking points designed to help rank-and-file Republicans show compassion for the unemployed and explain the Republican position on unemployment benefits, urging them to be empathetic toward the unemployed and understand how unemployment is a personal crisis for individuals and families. So while the right is getting its rhetoric together and how to come out on front of this, if there are reforms on the table to be negotiated from the Democratic side, what specifically would you be willing to talk about with Republicans to find a compromise on the extension?
Well, first, the Republicans are trying to appear compassionate, but they will not support, at least up until now, the Speaker has not said he would support emergency unemployment compensation. We should not use the most vulnerable, people who are living on the edge, as political pawns. We've never had to find what they call pay-fors in this. We need to go on and pass it at least for 3 months so we can work on a longer-term solution. People want to work. People do not want to be on unemployment compensation. And so while they're talking about being compassionate and caring about people who need this unemployment compensation, they need to vote for it, and they need to vote for it right away so people can get on with trying to find a job and turning their lives around.
Action speaks louder than words. Congresswoman
Absolutely.
Barbara Lee, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you making time for me.
My pleasure.
So how would you like to drive through